for each defendant be overruled and exceptions will be allowed. Now these boys are up for sentence. All right, let's have Edward Nelson Canady and Jimmy Douglas Boyd. Will you please appear before the bench?
Jimmy Boyd, Your Honor. I don't know where Canady is. I talked to him on the telephone yesterday afternoon about 4 o'clock, and I told him to be here this morning. He said that he would. I waited in my office for a while this morning. He didn't show up. I don't know where he is.
You leave word to your office for him to call you if he came in?
I told my secretary not having called me, just to have him right over here as fast as he could get here.
Mr. Bailiff, will you call Edward Nelson Canady and 3 times to appear and investigate and see why he's not here? You were given a trial here by the jury of your peers. They heard all the evidence. The sentence of the court that you be confined in the state penitentiary at McAlester, Oklahoma for a period of 5 years. That you be It'll be the judgment and sentence of the court you be confined in the state penitentiary, McAlester, Oklahoma, for a period of 7 years. Go down there and make a good, obedient prisoner. They're down there to help you.
You understand what I have, and I say this to the sake of court, y'all, but I can't emphasize it too much, as this NEPA process. Which would require some evidence here of this trial to remove that opinion. During that period of time, do not discuss this case among yourselves with anyone else. He is not on the trial today. And there's nothing in your acquaintanceship with Mr. $8,257.06. That's to pay these.
No, as of now, we've got over. And whether it was paid or not paid?
Not any particular given.
Asked me if there was sufficient earnings to pay the 6% for to the investors for the whole year 1956. And I said there was not, that there was a deficit. As I remember Mr. Berger's question, he tied it down to a specific period in the year 1956, not for the whole year. And during that period that he tied it down to, and he also said the dividends actually paid, and as I understood his question, during that period, and the dividends actually paid, there was a surplus of earnings over the dividends that were actually paid. Now, the period from the first of the year to September 25th, I believe is the period that he covered. There would be 9 months earnings. There would be 6 months dividends paid in that time.
So there was sufficient earnings during the first quarter of 1957 to...
I am asking you for the years as in and of themselves for a 12-month period, nothing more, nothing less, for the
the year 1956, does the selected investment trust fund have sufficient earnings to pay the 6% dividend which was paid to the certificate holders for that year?
For the entire year?
For the entire year.
No.
For the year 1957.
It was $2,226,754.81. I'm sorry, $794.81.
What portion of that payment to the trust certificate holders was paid out of the trust fund?
You mean the principal of the trust?
Yes.
All of it.
All of it, every bit of it, for the year 1957. Is that correct?
That's right. To a deficit of 321. Yeah.
That amount of money.
Well, yes, but not at that time.
Of $27,820,201.06. Leaving a
July 14, 1957, I called on Mr. Carroll and asked him the security of the company, as I had given him money before. And I asked him if the business was doing all right. He said it was. And he assured me that everything was getting along all right and I had nothing to worry about. And I said, well, it's strange that you can pay 6% when the bankers don't pay but about 2.5%. And he went ahead and explained to me how they could pay 6% with security. And he told me that the good loans they made and that they were doing a good business and I had nothing to worry about because I got my 6% before they got 1 penny.
And a third party over here would be designated as the custodian.
Or is it your testimony here today that the Selective Investments Trust Fund is in no trouble whatsoever and that there is plenty of money over there, all in the world that's needed to keep on paying 6% out of earnings and continue going right on down the line and making a lot of money? Is that your testimony today?
If you'll separate those multiple questions.
Is it your testimony here today that all the money in the world is needed, that is needed to keep that a going concern is over there now?
I sure do.
And it's your testimony that they're not in any trouble whatsoever?
I don't know about the present time, but at the time when we were there and when we left there, our assets were of such a nature that by a proper reorganization, we would have been today in operation, that we'd gone right on through the state court. We would have been in operation today and successfully operating because there are assets over there to do it.
And that's what you want this court and this jury to believe. That
They are there to do it with. And if it were reorganized on the basis that it could be reorganized on, it is a going concern.
I have filed 4 cases of forgery in the 2nd degree, 4 separate cases.
What do these 4 cases contain?
2 of them are warrants obtained from the state of Oklahoma, one in the amount of $560, the other in the amount of $675 on fraudulent claims by the Oklahoma Printing Company. All the fraud involves McCluskey, not the printing company. These warrants were then endorsed by McCluskey of the Department of Agriculture in his own handwriting, but with the name of Oklahoma Printing Company by Curtis E. Dolph, who is with that company. Evidently, payment was obtained on these warrants and from the Department of Agriculture, and then they were placed in deposit with the state treasurer for the Department of Agriculture Trust Fund. I'm sure they were cashed by the defendant in the Department of Agriculture.
What about the other two charges?
One of the others is a fraudulent claim evidently made by Mr. McCluskey in the name of a fictitious person, Dr. E.A. Armstrong, supposed to be a doctor of veterinary medicine. That particular one was for $450. A state warrant was obtained and cashed and again deposited with the state treasurer for the Department of Agriculture Trust Fund. The other was a forged claim, we believe forged by the defendant, in the name of a true veterinarian, Dr. E.R. Walker of Pawhuska, Oklahoma. That in the amount of $556.40. On it also a warrant was obtained, and the name of the payee on each of those warrants was forged by McCluskey.